down from floor 9. Which is actually floor 10 because you have ground floor too, so it's like the 10th floor.
Nice.
Yeah.
Ground floor.
We're in our boat, heading over to the Nairobi National Museum. So pretty exciting. Out and about. I'm here at the National Museum, and it's talking about a motoni. It's a headdress made by Maasai youths, and then it says preferably from big and colorful birds. And they say before the youth is circumcised, he wanders about the countryside with his friends, catching birds for his headdress. After circumcision, he waits for about 8 days and goes out to catch more birds. And then it talks about how the birds on display are examples of species which are commonly hunted for making the motoni headdress. So these are some of the birds that they catch. I saw these birds when we were at a stop, actually. Look at all the gourds. Sambut, also said Sambut, is a cloak made from the skins of the Sykes monkeys. So it shows the cloak and then the monkey that they use for the cloak. It says it's worn by leaders of the Kalenjin people and used for important occasions and ceremonies. But it says it's not sustainable to kill these animals. Now I'm going to check out the Great Hall of Mammals here in the National Museum in Kenya. This is the real skeleton of Ahmed, an elephant that lived on Mount Marsabit. He died in 1974 out of natural causes. That's incredible. Look at the tusks on that skeleton compared to typical tusks. Even a long tusker, that's incredible. We have the hippopotamus here, and it's saying that it's related to dolphins and whales, although it's only semi-aquatic, coming out of the water to feed on grass at night. It swims by walking below the surface of the water, keeping afloat through natural buoyancy. So these guys are related, that's why they show them together. I thought the skeleton was like of a extinct type of, mastodon or something, but it is not. It's just a very long tusked elephant, and he lived in a special area in Kenya, Mount Marsabit, and it's isolated volcanic area. Because of his really long tusks, the locals were worried about poachers coming and killing him, and so he was the only elephant that had two guards, 24 hours a day from like 1970. And he died in 1974. They say he died of natural causes, but he did have injuries, and he was shot at one point, and they found that out when they wanted to preserve his bones. They saw that there was fragments from a gunshot towards his tusk, and then he had a broken rib at one point, maybe from a fall, and a broken toe, but those bones fused together. They said that based on his size to tusk ratio is what made him the most impressive, because his tusks were big and weight and were heavy, but they weren't the heaviest pair. The heaviest pair recorded was 105 kilos each, and these were about 68 kilos each. They thought they'd be heavier and bigger just because of the ratio of the tusk to the elephant, but still pretty impressive. So he was 55. They think he was 55 years old about when he died of natural causes. And there was the human guards that watched him, and then there's also 2 other bull elephants that would hang out with him. I just thought that was so cool. Here they explain the Turana Wedding, and it says the Turkana man, marriage is the first step on the path towards independently owning livestock. All animals are allocated to a woman's house in the tribe system of livestock ownership. So a Turkana wedding is celebrated in 3 stages: negotiation, dowry payment, and the wedding ceremony. In all these stages, there is sharing of food and exchange of gifts like beads and livestock. So you can see the men presenting the meat to the other men. I was learning about the currencies here in Kenya, And it said that it used to be they would trade with salt, egg, ostrich shell beads, and cowrie shells. But they then started to trade with the Maria Theresa Thaler coin. And then later they used the British Indian rupee, Mombasa rupee, East African Protectorate 1 piece coin, East African Uganda Protectorate rupee, florin, the East African shilling, and eventually the Kenyan shilling. And then it also learned about how people here didn't have pockets, and so they came up with creative ways of using the coin. So that's why they have the necklace here showing how they would have used it, and later they used it in jewelry when they were no longer using those coins. So pretty interesting. Here we have a siwa, that's how I'd say it. It's a ceremonial side-blown horn, most distinctive items of regalia from the sub-Saharan Africa. This one was made of ivory, and in 1688, it's from Pate Island. I guess it was a symbol of unity. Swahili rulers served as its sole guardians. It's also believed to have supernatural and magical powers. This map shows the different people and where they came from. So you have the yellow is the Bantu, the blue is the Cushitic, the pink is the Nilotic, and the green is the Swahili. So it's interesting, the Swahili were just along the coast. And then you had these other groups. And it talks about how the first inhabitants of Kenya were hunters and gatherers. And then the other parts of Africa where people started to migrate from because of ironworks and settlements, and they were keeping domestic animals and growing crops, and so they had more settled or permanent lifestyles. So just talking about where people came from in the different parts of Kenya. Here they talk about the Ygondon Railway, and it says that Britain occupied Egypt in 1882, and they thought it would be good for them to have a railway between the Ugandon Railway between Mombasa and Lake Victoria, but they had issues building it, especially lack of manpower. The people here didn't want to be building it themselves, and so they used forced labor. Well, I shouldn't say forced labor, they used contracted laborers, but 38,000 of them, and almost 2,500 lost their lives due to lions, diseases, and other causes. And then the Africans objected to the railway passing through their land, and so they were trying to stop it. Took away building material as a source of iron, which was scarce, and it cost over 5 million British pounds then. And they thought it would be a great way for them to move goods, and they'd make all this money, but it was a expensive and uneconomical venture, and so they referred to it as the two rusting pieces of iron. So that's what they called it. So they have this exhibit here. And here there's a quote, says, "It is not uncommon for a country to create a railway, but it is uncommon for a railway to create a country." That's Sir Charles Eliot. These are some examples of some of the things that the people of Kenya would use to stretch their ears. And it explained that it used to be common for men and women to have their ears pierced, and now, especially the ear stretching, is not such a common thing, and ear piercing isn't very common for the men anymore. But that's what these were used for, was to stretch the ears. In some cultures, there was a painful process you would go through to stretch the ears, and you weren't supposed to show any fear. These are examples of headrests used by it says they're used in Egyptian and Zimbabwean civilizations and among various mobile communities in Africa. They were lightweight, easy to carry, and it would be so that people would have, they would be used as stools. And then warriors or people with intricately made hairdos, they'd be used to support their necks when they slept. When I see this, I think about how I have a neck pillow for my flight. This is like the old school neck pillows back in the day. This exhibit shows the honeycomb, And it shows the queen bee laying the eggs, the worker bee feeding the hatched larva to pupa, and then adult bee leaves cell. And it talks about what happens during the different days based on if it's a queen, worker, or drone. And it says the queen can lay between 2,000 and 3,000 eggs per day. They have a skeleton of a particular rhinoceros here called Karanja, and he died in 2014. He lived in the Masai Mara Reserve for 43 years, and they've mounted him here for educational purposes. But they said he basically died from old age. But he was like well-known, named rhinoceros, so that's why we see him here. He was supposed to have long horns though, so I don't know what they've done with the horns. That's not made obvious to me. I was reading about Elsa the lioness. She was a stimulus for the conservation efforts of Joy and George Adamson, and I'm going to look at different paintings from Joy Adamson actually is her last name. And I guess there was her husband George was a game warden and was forced to shoot and kill an attacking lion, and found out she had 3 cubs. That's probably why she was attacking, and so he took the cubs, and 2 were eventually brought to a zoo in Rotterdam, and they kept the female Elsa, and she was raised by them, and then they taught her survival skills because they wanted to reintroduce her into the wild, and she was successful being reintroduced into the wild. She unfortunately died from a tick bite, I guess, from a disease resulting from a tick bite in 1961, so she wasn't very old when she died, but that's what the lion's from. I'm going to look at some other of her paintings, but really beautiful paintings. I'm looking at more of J. Adamson's paintings, and I really like her underwater paintings. I think it's so delicate how she paints. Here's the triggerfish, a scorpion fish. I really like this longhorn cowfish, but I like those fish in general. There's a coral rock cod and a trumpet fish. So those are the fish paintings they have on display here. Otherwise, she has a lot of paintings of people and people from different tribes. And then I'm going to be going to other types of paintings that she produced. A really beautiful painter. I enjoy her art. This is information about Joy Adamson. She was married 3 times. So her first marriage was to a Jewish Austrian in 1935. He sent her to Africa for a safe place for both of them to escape the persecution of Jews during World War II. Later, she met and married a Swiss botanist, Peter Bali, who gave her the nickname Joy. And then her third husband was George Adamson, a British game warden in Kenya while on safaris. They married in 1943. But I guess she was murdered in January of 1980, but it doesn't explain how she was murdered. Just that she was discovered in the Shaba National Reserve in Meru, and she was discovered by her assistant Peter Morrison, and then her remains were cremated and ashes spread at the graves of her beloved lion and cheetah Elsa and Pippa. So I'm curious as to why she was murdered, but a little bit about Joy Adamson. And so that makes sense because I saw some of the paintings that said Joy. Some said Joy Adamson, some said Joy Bali. So that makes sense because of her being married. I just did a little bit of research about Joy Adamson, and I found out she was murdered by her assistant because he said that she didn't pay him for work that he did. And basically they got into an argument, and she shot him, and in defense he then stabbed her and killed her. That's what he claimed afterwards, but it's hard to know because he then said he was forced into a confession, but he was convicted for her murder in 1980. So, not very happy end to her life, but I guess that's potentially how she died. But all that to say is that she had a pretty interesting life with being married 3 times and all the artwork she produced. I guess when she first started drawing and painting, she was upset about the results and ripped it up, and her husband pieced it together and encouraged her to continue to paint. And so a lot of her botanical paintings were really helpful with for them to look at these botanical drawings in other places. So she had a pretty cool legacy, but that's how she died. Perfect, yeah.
Yes. And Matatu is from number 3. When we got independent, the year of 1963, the buses in Kenya were charging only 3 cents. Yes. And number 3 in Swahili, the lowest amount of money that you can pay is 30 Kenyan shillings, 30. And the highest is 200 Kenyan shillings. Just for the city.
That's for the city area.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then when you take a bus that is charging 30 Kenyan shillings, you take a decorated bus, it will charge you like 50 Kenyan shillings for the same distance. When you want to meet someone new, you tell them, let's meet at Hilton. It used to be Hilton Hotel. And Hilton is the biggest media company.
Biggest media company.
Called the Nation Media Group.
Nation
They have
Media Group.
television, they have it's open to public every day from Monday to Saturday. But today they have a kids fun day, so today is going to
It's
be
a kids
open
fun
for
day
kids.
today. That's so cool.
So when you go here, you can. It was converted to market for souvenir. The biggest part of this market is souvenir.
It's almost a souvenir here and meat
Sell flowers.
and flowers.
So we'll get a chance to visit this place.
The smell, but it smells. Because I'm with the butcher. They built this building in 1912.
To the year of 1917, this was the highest building that we had.
In 1917, this was the highest building they had in Kenya.
One day,
We learned that Nairobi means cool water, and it's a Maasai word.
and that is where they were feeding their cows. So when the British are in India and asked the Maasai, what is the name of this place? Or how do you call this place?
The Masai Mara were asked what this place is called, and they said Nkere, Nairobi, which means a place of cool water. So we just call it Nairobi, meaning cool water. It's illegal to smoke in public areas. If you get caught, it's a 6-month jail time minimum and up to 50,000 other money. So that's why they have this one smoking zone. It's the only place in the whole central business district where you can smoke legally. That's why you don't see people smoking on the streets. Here we have the biggest Catholic church in Nairobi. Oh, the first stone building church. There's a capacity of 700 people. I think it's built in 1960. 1935, the British built this. It's the office of the governor. It's a city hall here in Nairobi.
And for the 47 counties, every county has an elected governor who is the leader of the county, and there is an elected senator who is the representative in the parliament. So this is where you have the office of the governor and the office of the county assembly.
This is where the county assembly, they have 47 different counties that have a representative here. And there's 2 flags, one for the county government, and then the other is the Kenyan flag. So here's the Supreme Court of Kenya.
Representing Kenya before we got independence. We were like a flower that has not opened up. The tall tower is the opening of the flower, representing Kenya. After we got independence, our flower opened up. The only building in the city center with a view point. You can
There's a viewpoint up here.
And while on top of that tower, you can enjoy the view of the Buddha.
He's saying this is 2 points. One is like a flower that hasn't opened yet from when before they gained independence. And this is like the opened flower since they've gained independence.
Yeah, so this is
It says the Kenyatta National Convention Center. The first president was Jomo Kenyatta. This was a memorial park for the August 7th car bombing that happened here. It's the U.S. Embassy was destroyed in 1998. Something like 213 people died from this car bombing. The 7-story building collapsed. Heading back from the city, from Nairobi to the apartment where we're staying. Bit of traffic in town, but then once you get out of town, it clears up a bit. Alright, going into our place. I turn on some lights. So it's a little messy because we have stayed here. Yesterday when we arrived, the cleaner was here, but I didn't know it was a cleaner. There was just like a lady who opened the door and she didn't explain who she was or anything. So we were just kind of like, okay. But how huge is that TV screen? It's ginormo. And then there's the main bedroom. Views outside. Big closet. That's me. And then the restroom. So it has like the rain shower. Cute little bathroom. But that is it.